friends, we are back for the next session of the one and only Bob. Gavin caught me on my last video. I had a tendency to say the one and only Ivan, and it's just because I love that book so much, and it's only one word of a difference, so my brain automatically goes to Ivan, and I don't know why. I love this book. I love Bob. I love our little sassy character, so my apologies, and thank you, Gavin, for bringing that to my attention. I think now I'll be more conscious and really try to stay in the right realm, the right book. So we are going to continue reading our awesome story about Bob. We just met a really interesting character named Kim Yu, who really raised the question and the importance of sanctuary zoos and their treatment of animals. I asked your opinion regarding what you think is the best choice. So if an animal is born in captivity, should they stay in captivity their whole life? Should they be given an opportunity to go live in the wild? And most of you said that it really depends on the situation, depending on the animal, their circumstances, and their capabilities. Maybe they should go back in the wild, but that does raise a point that sometimes it isn't the safest and best option for them because they didn't grow up in the wild. So it is very hard to assimilate, or another word there is like transform back into this wildlife where someone's not giving you medicine, someone isn't giving you food every day, you have to hunt for your food, you have to defend yourself, so it's a lot more responsibility and a little bit of a harder life, but nevertheless we hear that Kim Yu really does want to be given that opportunity, and or at least fantasizes about it and thinks about it often. So we're going to continue thinking about that because I think his view, Kim Yu's view, aligns a lot to Bob's view on being wild and free. So we're going to continue reading. We have yet to see Ivan and Ruby, but we do know that a hurricane and now a tornado may be on the horizon. If you're following along, we're on page 100. Enrichment. We're almost to my favorite spot in the park. The great thing for me is that one corner of Gorilla World juts up against Elephant Odyssey, the area where Ruby lives. A low stone wall separates the two spaces, and there's a moat on the elephant side. The sections connect like two slices of pie, and my secret spot is right at the center, where I can hang out with my crew. Ivan and Ruby both have access to indoor habitats, which is great when the weather isn't cooperating. So that's very important, what we just heard. Ivan and Ruby both have access to indoor habitats when the weather isn't cooperating. So there is an indoor space within their sanctuary for Ivan and for Ruby if there is a very bad storm coming. So let's remember that. The indoor space for gorillas isn't bad. I call it the Gorilla Villa. It has tons of ropes and hammocks and branches to climb. Humans watch through a thick wall of glass where the young gorillas run around like kids at recess. So that was a simile there. But whenever Julia and I visit, we can almost always find Ivan and Ruby outside. So I wonder why that is. Maybe Big Top Mall has something to do with it. We trudge up a little rise, though it isn't much of a hill. We live in a pretty flat part of the earth. From there, I can see just about everything. The park, the parking lot, the creek. Far beyond that, every now and then, I can even catch a glimpse of the ocean. My secret place is a little hard to get to, right near the keeper's shed, nicely hidden by trees and bushes. Under a big magnolia tree, there's a bench shaped like a gorilla holding out his arms. Julia likes to sit there and draw. Sometimes she does her homework, which smells like frustration and a hint of eraser. Whenever I visit, Julia props me up to the stone wall that separates Ruby's world from Ivan's. Visitors can't see me, and the keepers pretend not to see me. If they caught any other dog there, he'd be out in a heartbeat, but Ivan and Ruby and I have history. I make them happy. On what you might call enrichment. At the park, they try to keep the animals engaged with surprises and challenges and changes to their environment. That's what enrichment is all about. The gorillas get watermelons to demolish and boxes to hide in and markers for drawing. The elephants get sprinklers and flavored water and elephant-sized rubber balls. Not exactly like a day in the real jungle, of course, but the keepers try as hard as they can to make life interesting. For Ivan and Ruby, I'm the ultimate enrichment. I'm their best pal. Walls and bad guys. Julia takes me out of her backpack and I settle onto the wide stone wall. It's my fave place on the planet because it means I can see Ivan and Ruby. But I also kind of hate it. Walls will do that to you. And look who we see. He's smiling a little bit. It may be hard to see there. Ivan, being Ivan, is a mellow kind of guy. Takes the good with the bad, only gets angry when he really needs to. When I complain about the walls at the park, he says, walls keep the animals in, but they also keep the bad guys out. Of course, gorillas don't have a whole lot of bad guys to deal with, elephants either, so humans step up to fill the void. Dogs? Sometimes it feels like we have enemies galore. Everyone wants a piece of us. Humans treat us badly, cars really have it in for us. We can even get eaten by coyotes, which is kind of like having your cousin invite you over for dinner, then inform you that you're the main course. Although, I'd probably just be an appetizer. Anyways, after those 27 years stuck in a mall, Ivan is one of those glass half full kind of guys, which means he's very optimistic when it comes to the walls surrounding him. Glad to be with others of his own kind, cared for by smart and loving humans. I'm more of a water bowl of power half empty kind of guy. That means he's pessimistic, so he's usually a little bit more on the negative side. Every time I leave Ivan and Ruby, I am painfully aware that I can leave. Ivan's address is Gorilla World. Ruby's is Elephant Odyssey. So now we're kind of seeing George for the first time. I never pictured him to look like that. But there is Julia and Bob. And maybe I'm assuming that's the mom, but I'm not too sure. And me, I guess my address is the same as Julia, George's, and Sarah's. So that was Sarah. 1249 Hinman Avenue. I mean, of course it is. I've been living there a whole year now. It is. And yet, sometimes I still wake up at night and think, gotta find shelter, gotta find safety, gotta find somewhere to belong. Guess I don't want to get too comfortable. So here again, we're seeing a lot of lack of trust in Bob with Julia. But it is very interesting that we hear a little bit about Ivan and his optimistic view on where he lives. Bob looks at it kind of with this negative tone that it's not where he should be. He should be in the wild and he isn't really free. But Ivan kind of looks at it like, listen, this is a better situation than where I was. I have people around me that are my own kind. Like he has his girlfriend and his family and his troop that he takes care of because he is their silverback. And he has smart and loving humans to take care of him. So Ivan's looking at his situation like, this is best case scenario for me. Like I lived in a cement room for 27 years. I couldn't necessarily go back into the wild and be free. So he's looking at it positively, but I think that Bob still looks at it very negatively. Gift. Once I'm in my spot, I don't have to do a thing because Ivan and Ruby always know I'm there. Gorillas and elephants have great schnozzes too, which is a nose. Also, I pride myself on staying extra fragrant. It's a gift. Ivan. Ivan gets to me first. Bob! He knuckle walks up the hill, knuckle runs actually, and he looks as glad to see me as I am to see him. It seems like I've known Ivan forever, and yet every time I see him, I feel kind of awed. He's so powerful, so huge, like this magnificent silver mountain that just happens to be my best buddy. Hi, Ivan, Julia calls, waving. He cocks his head and makes a soft belch, which is gorilla for I'm happy. So he burps when he sees Julia, but it really just means he's happy. Sorry, the train is going by and it's so far away, but the fact that it's this loud is because the door is open. So I'm sorry, my apologies. Maya calls out to Julia from the door to the gorilla's indoor space. Maya's a zoologist with a hooty-tooty way of saying she has a thing for animals. It was Maya and a lot of other good folks who helped get Ivan and the rest of the mall animals moved to better places. So Maya was the one who was coming and saving them. Julia unhooks my string and gives me a stern look. No funny business, you, she says, and then she kisses me on the head. Stay out of sight. Ivan sidles up as close as the stone wall as he can get. I was worried you wouldn't come today, he says. Weather and all. Another hurricane, I say. It's freaking everybody out. Above me, magnolia branches sway. Leaves rustle and shiver. Every tree seems uneasy. What's new? Ivan asks. He lies back on the grass and wriggles contentedly. Scratching an itch, no doubt. Not much. Had a weird dream last night. I pause. You were in it. And me. And Ruby. And Stella too. Ivan gazes at the darkening sky. Stella, he says, now there was a great friend. Classiest elephant you'll ever hope to meet. The best, I agree. I miss the old gal. We fall silent. All good with you? I ask after a moment. No point in dwelling on sad stuff or bad dreams. Kenyani's getting on my nerves a bit. Ivan do this. Ivan do that. But she means well. Kenyani is Ivan's lady friend. Girlfriend? I've never been sure what they call it in Gorilla. Kenyani doesn't really approve of me. She thinks I'm a bad influence on Ivan. I like to think she's right. Ivan is 400 pounds of pure power, but Kenyani is 400 times scarier. Trust me. I've seen her in a bad mood. I've also seen her teeth make mine look like toothpicks. Ivan and Kenyani don't have kids, but there's a bunch of baby and juvenile gorillas hanging around. They call him Uncle Ivan, and he puts up with their antics. Ivan's always been a good sport. If I had a gorilla toddler hanging off me, I'd be tempted to use my toothpick teeth. And we're going to stop there. That was on page 111. We got to see a little bit of our friend Ivan. Hopefully we do get to talk to Ruby in our next session, which would be on Monday. But it's very interesting to hear Bob say that Kenyani doesn't necessarily love Bob. She thinks she's a little bit of a bad influence, which just means that he's someone that doesn't bring out the best in Ivan, and maybe he makes Ivan make choices that aren't the smartest, which is funny. But I'm sure she does care for Bob, obviously, but she does kind of poke his buttons a little bit and joke around with him being a bad influence, but Bob doesn't seem to mind. But we're really just hearing two friends connect and talk about a friend that they lost, which was Stella, and just talk about what's going on where they are and the weather. And I think that we have a lot to discuss with Bob and his anxiety with humans, his distrust with humans still, and just his outlook on wild animals and where their location should be. So today I'm going to ask you some pretty hard-hitting questions and some pretty grown-up questions on Flipgrid. So try your best and give your honest opinion, because you can have an opinion that is different than my own, and that's the cool thing about opinions. So I will see your answers there.